Crashes, upset straight away, familiar faces. Tour de France delivers immediately. We got the technical city TT around Copenhagen, starts from the Tivoli and finishes there, Tivoli Gardens. We've got the peloton here. We can see them commuting to the start via their city bikes. And tomorrow and on Sunday, we've got some tricky flat stages. Could be wind affected. We'll see them. They're ones to watch. But today, as I said, was the TT. We had the team presentation, Mads Pedersen, Van der Poel. Could they upset Ganna, Van Aert, Kung, Thomas? How would he go? Home hero Jonas emotional at the team presentation. Roglic against Pogacar. Haven't seen them in ages. This was the first test. And it was technical and it was raining. And we saw the way teams chose the time slots for their riders. There was about a 40-minute window that all the top contenders and the top GC riders were put in because they thought the rain would be later in the day. But the rain actually came earlier, which threw this TT completely, and all the predictions and odds and favorites were actually hindered by this early rain that came before the forecast, before all the teams expected. And so Bissiger went early in the midst of that rain, one of the favorites for the TT, and first corner, just about 90 seconds in, we see him fishtailing, and he didn't look comfortable straight away. I think Roglic crashed from EF, Uran set a horrible time, first crash, chain off. Unfortunately for the Swiss bull, the yellow jersey dreams and the stage win gone for him. And then this is the crash that we saw. He slid out. He'd get back up and he actually would crash again. So it seemed like there was a disadvantage to starting earlier, actually, compared to at about 5:15, 5:30. We see that it's actually Bjarne Riis who took him down the second time. Look, it's Bjarne Riis on the road, not allowed at the tour, but he's on the ground already taking riders out. So Bissiger goes down. Bad day for him and bad day for EF. Also, Paulus, he was fast to T1 and then slow to the finish. But with this wet conditions, a tricky technical course, 13 Ks around Copenhagen, you can't win the TT today. We saw Roglic setting off and we're like, just don't lose the TT. Van der Poel perfect in these technical twisty TTs, but would the rain put him off really going full gas because he's got other stages in mind? Says he's not going for the green jersey. He set a good time. He went into the hot seat in front of Bauke Mollema, the Dutch national champion in the time trial, but it wasn't the hottest time from Van der Poel. And it wasn't a huge gap to Mollema. We had Roglic, who looked very, very fast, Rog thick on the straights, but in the corners, visibly very tentative. And I'll say it now, let's get it out of the way. Stage one, don't put your hands over the barriers on the apexes of corners. Let's not have another Opiomi. Let's just avoid it now. The riders, they use the apex, they use the whole road. But here you see, we'll do a side by side. We did this for, I think, the Dauphiné between Roglic and Jonas. You see Roglic takes this wide line and Pogacar way wider. He was about 40 minutes after Roglic, and now Pogacar's already pedaling through this corner, whereas Roglic is just still trying to straighten up. So it's sort of what happened to what Thomas was describing as well, and I didn't match them up side by side perfectly, but you can basically see that Pogacar's like a second ahead of Roglic just through this chicane, and Roglic still sets a really good time, only 2 or so seconds after Van der Poel. But Thomas said, like, being tentative almost made him corner worse to T1. It's when he really went for it that he started going better. Same thing almost seemed to happen with Roglic. Jonas walking up the ramp looking very awkward, and Thomas, who I just mentioned, in that sort of Death Star helmet, they forgot to take off his gilet, or he forgot to take it off. So in the midst of the pouring rain, because it was probably pretty chilly, he's wearing a gilet. They probably spent I don't know how many thousands on his skin suit and position, and he wears a gilet during the Tour de France Stage 1 TT, and he did unbelievable T1 to the finish, Thomas. Like, it'll go unnoticed, but Thomas' second section of this TT was unbelievably good. Jonas did a really good time as well. Those two, visibly to me, seemed like they were doing it in the worst conditions. In heavy rain, you can see the spray off their back wheels, particularly Jonas. And unlike Roglic, perhaps G'd up by the fact that he had the home crowd screaming his name, Jonas was much more aggressive in these corners, probably not as fluid as Pogacar. Pogacar, his intermediate to the finish was just the most impeccable handling you'll ever see in wet conditions. But Jonas beat Roglic by a few tenths of a second. Unbelievable time from him. Vlasov, a little bit less than one would think with that very, very odd helmet. And now it's time for the big boys. Filippo Ganna, the favorite for the TT, who usually wins his targets. Apparently, he had a slow leaking flat, didn't have a bike change, and he didn't even end up in the top 3 of this TT. only 2.5 seconds ahead of Van der Poel. That would not be enough against the likes of Wout van Aert to come, who is going for the yellow jersey, and also the important green jersey points. There's 20, I think 17 and 15 on offer for the first three, and he puts a full 5.5 seconds into Filippo Ganna, and you're thinking, if Van Aert, that's the man he has to beat. Kung did a terrible time. Wout van Aert beats Ganna. That's the TT wrapped up. Pogacar pushed him pretty close, though. And it's interesting. There's two halves to Pogacar's TT. You see this is first 45 seconds. Very tentative in these couple of corners early. You see him shaking his head as well. I think it's almost the same as Thomas. I'm sure they got it in the earpiece and just been like, don't crash, don't crash, don't crash. And Thomas sort of said he just ignored that and went really hard in the later half of the TT. And Pogacar the same. You just see visibly much more aggressive in the second half of the TT in the corners, and he sets an incredibly good time. He puts a full 8 seconds into Roglic and Jonas, so strike one to Tadej Pogacar. The weather may be a little bit better for him, definitely better for Christophe Laporte, the Frenchman on Jumbo-Visma, who at T1 was a second quicker than Wout van Aert and was the quickest time to T1 before he crashed with 4.5 Ks to go, slid out. But that meant that only one man could beat Wout van Aert's time. People had turned the TV off. People said the TT was over. I thought it was over. And when you see his, these socks, like, why do we even have the rule? Like, look at his socks. They're almost up at his knees. They're like the triathlete compression socks, or the ones Valverde wears everywhere on the bus. Lampaert, the Belgian national time trial champion, I think in 2021, a serious time trials, but not in the sort of category of Kung, Ganna, and Wout van Aert. He sets the best time. We see him at 6 seconds with 3.3 Ks to go. The technical TT helped him. The drier conditions, the wind change, all worked in his favor, but he was still unbelievably good. And Wout van Aert already knew at this point, with 10 seconds left to go to his time, that Lampaert was going to win. His countryman taking him out of the hot seat, and another second place for Wout van Aert in a TT, which everyone thought he'd already won when he crossed the line. But Lampaert didn't believe he'd won. Even when he was watching Marc Soler, he was like a minute behind him at T1. Lampaert was like, nah, I could still lose. Only when the last rider crossed the line did he really believe he'd won. And even then, I'm not sure he truly believed it. So a massive upset win for Yves Lampaert, who said he was just hoping for a top 10 today. Beats Van Aert, Pogacar, Ganna, Van der Poel, Pedersen, Jonas, Roglic, Mollema, and Turns. Turns went late too, and a good TT from him. Here's what Lampaert had to say after the stage.
My mind is exploding. I can't. I'm just a farm son from Belgium to do this. I never expected.
So Lampaert also goes, obviously, into the yellow jersey. That one doesn't fit him too well. He's got a bit of a long torso. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you subscribe down below. We've got a big weekend of hopefully crosswind action. So I'll see you at the recap of that tomorrow. Ciao.